This is the smart screen from TrainTech, and today we're going to look at how to wire it up, set it up and add it to your layout to add lots of realism. So first let's have a look at the module itself, and it's really very small, as you can see. In fact, if I put a little ruler here, you'll see exactly how small it is. It's 30 millimeters long, and inside this module we've got the screen on the front part. If I turn it over, you can see we have the connections on the back. The two outer connections are connecting to power, which can be DC or DCC, and then there's a couple of smaller connections in the middle which you can connect to things like track sensors or switches to change the messages that are displayed on the smart screen. So first let's connect up a couple of wires and see how to set it up. So the first thing we're going to do is connect up these wires. You get some nice fine wire in with each smart screen, and so we'll strip the end and then solder those connections on to the smart screen. So first we'll tin the wires, and then a little bit of solder on the screen. I'm going to turn it round so I put the connections on here. Keep the connections quite slim, you don't need very much solder on them. And the reason for that is if you're going to fit it in one of the enclosures, there isn't much space in behind it, so you want to keep them nice and slim. So you should end up with two nice joints, nice and bright and shiny, and they're usually good soldered joints. Every smart screen comes with this instruction booklet, and I know lots of us don't bother reading instructions first, but with this product it really is worth it. The first page tells you how to connect it up, which we've just done. The next page tells you how to enter your own messages and how you can control them. And then the last pages go into different projects about how to mount it inside a train, on a platform, and other projects like that. So it's really worth having a look at it first, and in particular, planning out what your message, what you wanted to say. So let's have a start then with this. Now I'm using the Bachmann Dynamist. There's no particular reason why this, but because it can be controlled by virtually any DCC controller that can control loco addresses, so it's pretty much all of them. What's worth doing if you have a choice of controller is finding and using a controller which has got the function keys separately. Most of them have, and this will make this job just that little much easier. By the way, I should mention here as well, if any of this programming worries you, then TrainTech do offer a programming service for a very small fee extra, and we can set it all up for you. But there's a lot of fun and a lot of satisfaction in doing it yourself, and of course you can change it at will later on as well. So let's have a look at how to program it. I'm going to switch on the track power. These two wires have been connected to the normal track power, and you can see that the display has powered up. I'm now going to enter the address, and it goes, by the way, into demo mode there, and I'm now going to enter the address to start programming it. So I go into loco programming, and I'm going to give it loco address 55, which is the programming address. And then I'm going to press F8, which tells you in the instructions, and that's going to take me into smart screen programming mode, as you can see. So the screen now says program address, and now various options. I can now edit my message or edit controls. What that means is edit the message, and there's 10 different screens that you can set up with your own messages on them. The controls, the edit controls function, is to allow you to tell the screen how you want to control those messages, whether you want to just cycle them around, whether you want to control them with a track sensor, or maybe give them the same DCC address as a loco or a point. So let's start anyway with entering the message, and I mentioned a moment ago it's well worth planning this before you get started. I've made some notes here about what I want my messages to say. I'm going to use 2 of the 10 screens, screen A and screen B, and I'm going to set it up as a destination screen on a station to go to Cambridge, with a couple of stations in between. So this is the main edit message screen. It defaults to message A, which is the first screen. I'm now going to press F6 to start editing. Now you can see the message is empty, but on my list I decided I was going to have a real-time clock on the screen. So let's put that on first by pressing 0. And now I can start entering my message. So I do this by pressing function 3 or function 4 and finding the letters or numbers that I want. My message is going to say 10:25 to Cambridge. So the first thing I'm going to do is enter 10:25. This is rather like using the earlier generations of mobile phones before we had touch screens and smart screens. It meant that we can enter messages just pressing the keys multiple times. So that takes a little bit of time, it's not difficult. So I'm just going to put 5 in here. Add a little bit of a space. I'm going to enter Cambridge now. You'll notice that the clock at the moment, it says 0000. This is just so you can see how much space this is going to take. But later on we'll be able to set the clock to the right time, and it remembers the right time for as long as it's powered as well. So there we are. I've got my top line, 10:25 Cambridge. So now I'm going to go to my next line, and it automatically moves to the next line once it's covered the top line. Now my bottom line, I've decided to say that it's calling out various stations. In my case, it's going to be calling out Stevenage, Baldock, Royston and Cambridge because it's coming from London. It's going to take a little time to put this in, but you'll notice that as we get nearer the end of the screen that I'm effectively going to run out of space. But the screen, just like the real thing, once it gets too long, the second line automatically rotates to display up to over 100 characters. So plenty of space there for lots of long messages on the second line. Just going to go back and put a comma in now. You'll notice then it's just moved it along by one. As I said, there's well over 100 characters that you can put into the bottom line. I've got to put in Royston. So you can probably see now why it's important to make notes and sit and decide what you want to say and write it down before you start. Otherwise it's so easy to get something wrong and then it's a bit frustrating. You can always edit it. You can insert letters and words and take parts away. You don't have to enter everything again. But I found it much easier to sit down and work it out before I started entering and write it down. Makes this job much easier. You'll notice that every letter you can make either a capital or a lowercase, and you can change it at will just by pressing one button. That's actually F5. As I said earlier, you can use almost any DCC controller. I say almost, we've got about 12 at Train Tech, and we tried it with all of them and were able to use them to program a smart screen. So any DCC controller, as far as we're aware, that can program DCC local addresses, you should be able to enter messages. Just some will be a bit easier than others if you've got the function keys separate, like this Dynamis. Nearly there now. Nearly finished my first screen. And when I've finished, I press F8, and that, as you can see, saves it away. And for the first time, we can see what my screen looks like, which is very gratifying, I can tell you. We can check it. If there's anything wrong, we can go back in and edit it. Now everything looks pretty much okay, except that I've noticed that my last destination, the Cambridge, is very, very close to the calling out at the end. So I'm going to add some spaces, and this is how you edit a screen. So first I go back in by pressing F8. Just wait for that to go through. And then I'm going to edit my message, so it's F4. And now I'm going to edit it by pressing F6. And now I'm going to go and scroll down using the cursor, move the cursor to the place that you want to make a change. I'm going to add some spaces at the end of Cambridge so that it doesn't roll into the calling out in quite the same way. Okay, so this is where I'm adding some spaces here. And then when I've finished, just press F8, and it saves the revised message, and let's have a look at it now. Much better. So now I'm ready to set up my second screen, screen B. And to do that, again, I press F8 to get into the editing mode. Edit message, but this time I'm going to use F4 and F5 to get to message B. So I use F5 because I'm going to go up, and that's message B, and now I'm going to edit that. And again, of course, at the moment this message is empty. I do want to show the time as well on this screen, on the top line. So I've entered the time in, and now I'm going to enter again 10:25 Cambridge. Okay, so that's my main top line. I'm just going to scroll along until I finish. Now I'm at the bottom line. You see the flashing cursor. I'm going to enter the bottom line. I've decided to put train approaching, please stand clear on the bottom line. I'm going to start with some asterisks, which is exactly what happens on the real thing. So we're going to enter a couple of those. Now I should tell you at this point that the screen remembers all of this text that you're putting in even when the power is disconnected. So don't worry, you haven't got to enter it again unless you want to change it in the future. The only thing it doesn't remember is the time, because it needs some power to do that. But it's really easy to set the time, and we'll show you how to do that in a little while. I'm nearly finished now. I'm just going to put a couple of asterisks at the end as well. And that's it. A little bit of space at the end, just like we did on the last one in the edit. And then when I've finished, just press F8. Saves it away into its memory, and there we have it. At the moment, it's just showing the screen A, but now we need to tell it, that's screen B, and now we need to tell it how we want the message screens to change between them. So at the moment, it just cycles between the two to show you. Now we'll go back into editing again by pressing F8. And now this time we're going to press F5 to edit control. That means we're going to edit the way we're going to control it. I've decided for the moment we're going to control it by an accessory command. So I'm going to press F5 again. And now it's asking me which screen message pair that I want to control from an accessory, because you can only control two screens, or two things in fact, from an accessory command. So I've obviously entered my messages A and B, so I'm going to control those. So I press F6 to set that. And now I just need to set the accessory address and tell it which accessory address I want to change it. And we're going to use address 8. So what we're doing is we're using the controller to set the actual address that we want to change it at, and it will remember that address. So no need for lots of complicated CV commands or anything. It's just remember that that's the way I'm going to change it. So now with my Dynamis, but again, you can use lots of other controllers as well, I can use my accessory address to change it from one message, and this is message B, the train is now approaching, to message A, which is telling me where the train is calling at. So now we've set our messages, the last thing I'd like to show you is how you set the time on one of these smart screens. And this is really easy to do. As I said, it does forget the time when you take the power away. So when you switch on, if you want the time to be correct, this is how to do it. Firstly, you need to go to the address of the clock. By default, it's address 56. So set 56 into a loco address on your controller. And then enter the time just using the function keys with their numbers. So let's at the moment set it to 10:15. So we enter 1, 0, 1, 5, and you'll see the clock immediately changes. And by the way, if you've got more than one smart screen on your layout and they're all set to the same address for setting the clock, they'll all change at once. So this is something that just takes seconds when you switch your layout on for the first time with your smart screens on it. It is a 24-hour clock as well, so if we wanted to, we could set that time to quarter to midnight. So to do that, again, we just put in 23:45, and you'll see the time changes immediately to 23:45. That's all you need to do, and it will keep perfect time for as long as you've got the power connected. So we've seen how we set up messages into a smart screen and how to control it from an accessory command. But there's other ways you can control the smart screen, and I'm now going to show you how you can connect a track sensor or a sensor signal to trigger the messages when a train goes nearby. So first thing to do is to disconnect the wires from your power supply, and I'm going to add now a wire on the back to the connection marked A, and that's for one of the switch or sensor inputs. So I've got another piece of wire here. Just going to strip the end and going to tin the wire, and just the same way as we did the original power connections. And I'm going to tin the, remember to keep the wire connections short and quite flush to the back. Quick joint like that, and that's done. So now I've got 3 wires on here. 2 are my power and 1 is my control input. Don't forget to mark which ones are which before you do the next stage. Now, you don't have to fit them in our enclosures, but TrainTech do make 3 different enclosures for this. You've got a right-hand post, a left-hand post, and then a different enclosure which you can use to hang under a station canopy or something like that. I'm going to choose, let me see, I'm going to choose this one. This is a left-handed post, and I'm going to mount the display in there. You don't have to fix it in with anything. I'm going to just use a little bit of blue tack and put on the back of the screen just to hold it in position. I'm going to get my 3 wires together, and I'm going to pass the wires down the post. Like that. Just feed them down, gently pull them through, and then ease them in gently and just locate the display and push it gently in. Be very careful with the front of these screens because they are made of glass. And that's my screen in position. Next thing I'm going to do is mount it in a platform. I've got a little bit of platform here to show you. I've got a little hole already made in the platform where I want it. And again, I'm sure you're going to make a neater job than I will here today. I'm just going to put a little bit of blue tack to hold it in position. But you could use either blue tack or black tack or tacky wax or something like that just to hold it. So I'm just going to get a little bit of blue tack here and just to hold it in position. Right, I'm going to face it towards you. On your own layout, you might want to face it to the left or the right, depending on which way the trains come or the way you want your passengers to see it. Next thing I'm going to do is get a bit of track. Hope that's going to behave itself. And show you how easy it is to connect it up. So I'm going to use a track sensor. This is one of our track sensors. And there's an output there which connects directly to this with no other electronics or anything needed. Although there are some other outputs here on a track sensor which you can connect to LEDs and indicate other things. Incidentally though, if you've got some of our sensor signals already and they're in the right position, you can also use the output connection from that to control your smart screen. So you don't need to necessarily buy a track sensor. This really isn't going to behave, is it? So, get some track. Got a couple of pieces here. If you're using DCC, you can plug the track sensor straight in, just like you would a power clip, and it takes its power from the DCC. If you're using DC, and I've always mentioned that everything here will work on DC or DCC, then you need to just cut off these plug-in fingers here and connect 2 wires to the power terminals at the back there. That's quite natural and normal to do. It's the way they were designed to work. So they'll work happily on DC or DCC. But if you've got DCC and you don't want to wire them separately, you can just slide it into the track like that. I'm going to position this, let me think, let's have it a little bit further up. So I'm going to put another piece of track in, plenty of running. So there's plenty of space and one more piece of track at the end. Like that, locating it like that. Next thing we're going to do is connect the track sensor input from the screen into here. Of course, this is all very temporary what I'm doing. Normally you would mount maybe put holes in your baseboard and put them through and hide them underneath, or of course you can leave the wires on the top of the base, just like the real railway, which has lots of wires usually by it. And I want to just show you how easy this is, because this just plugs in like that, and that makes a good connection. You can use other wire if you want to, but this is the fine wire that you get included with the smart screen. So that's all the only connection that you need. The last thing you've got to do is connect power to my piece of track, which you've probably already done on your own layout, and also of course power to the smart screen. I've used a couple of crocodile clips here, just easier to use to make this video. And I've got the power output for the track. Just going to check where I've got these. There we are. Again, I'm sure on many of your layouts you won't be using the power clip, but I'm just trying to show you how easy it is without having to do lots of complicated wiring, but do the wiring however you choose to do. So that's it. We've got my piece of track connected up. I've got my track sensor connected ahead of my smart screen. And if I switch the power on, just put my Dynamis power on here. Should be lighting up. You can see what it displays. Now I'm going to connect a train. This is a class 31 here. Doesn't matter, of course, what loco. It will detect most trains. And now I'm going to pass it by and have a look at the screen as the train passes over the sensor. So you can see the screen automatically saw the train was passing by. I'll show you again, in case you missed it the first time. As soon as the train goes past, the sensor recognises it, triggers the message on the screen to say train approaching. And that just shows how easy and quick it is to connect up a track sensor to trigger your smart screen. It could say train approaching, or it could say lots of other messages on there. So we've seen how you can control a smart screen by an accessory address or by a track sensor or sensor signal. But you can also control it from a DCC loco address. A lot of coaches now include a screen in the window to tell passengers getting on or off at a station where the train is going to. And we've fitted one into this little model here. As you can see, it tells you where it's going to. We've just fitted this into the window and connected the two wires straight to the track. There's no other electronics involved. If I reverse the direction of the train, then I can see the reverse destination and the train disappears. And although I've shown this on a DCC fitted train, it even works with DC locos by changing the direction of the motor. By changing the polarity on the track, we'll change the direction of the loco and change the smart screen destinations as well. So there you have it. We've seen how to control smart screens by DCC accessory and loco commands, track sensors and sensor signals, but you can also make your own sensors using magnetic Hall effect or microswitches, or just regular buttons and switches. For more information, please contact us or your TrainTech dealer, or visit our website at www.train-tech.com. Thanks for watching.